What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Women's Vault podcast with your girl, Sierra Simone. Thank you guys so much for coming back. We are on episode number 6, and today's episode is all about forgiveness. We're going to talk about how we can forgive and flourish, right? This is actually going to be the first episode where I talk about my child's father. I feel like our relationship and the growth that's happened over the year is a great example of what forgiveness looks like. You grow a lot when it comes to learning how to co-parent. And so for me personally, for us to be in a space to where we are now, it took a lot of forgiveness on my side. And I'm pretty sure he's had to do some forgiveness as well, but we don't really talk like that, so I wouldn't know what he got going on. But I won't be bashing my child's father. I will try to not spill too much tea on certain situations that took place. I want to respect everyone's story and their truth, but at the same time, I have to release mine as well. But yeah, I just want to give a disclaimer. My child's father is not a deadbeat. Great dad. Was he a good boyfriend? Hell no. Was he there for me like he should have been? Hell no. Has he apologized to me since then? Yes, he has, multiple times actually. It's just, we're just not meant to be. It is what it is. Let bygones be bygones. And that's what we're talking about today, forgiveness, right? So just to give y'all a little backstory on me and my child's father. I'm just going to list off the big stuff. I'm not going to go into details, y'all, because I'm not even trying to start no BS with my child's father at all. So I'm literally just going to give like bullet points. So, we were together. Things were very good between my child's father and I in the very beginning stages. Once we started dating, I remember asking him, why don't we go on dates anymore? And I remember vividly him saying, I have you now. There's no point in doing all of that. Like, what's the point in doing that? And that was the point at which I should have walked away. But at that point in time, this is why I created this podcast. I'm sharing my story so that you guys don't have to go through the same thing. Back then, I thought I did the work, but clearly I didn't because I stayed. I thought that maybe I could change him. Baby, you can't change no man that don't want to be changed. Sugarfoot. So, I'm like, well, maybe things can get better. Maybe if I show how supportive I am, or just, I'm thinking of different things that I could do to make him want me again in that way. Fast forward, I found some messages between him and his ex. This is why I don't go through phones no more. My child's father was actually the last man's phone that I went through. I don't go through any phones whatsoever. You go look for something, you won't find it. And so yeah, him and his ex were texting back and forth. She wanted him to come for her birthday. She lived up north somewhere. He was thinking about going, and then I'm seeing messages of him talking crap about me and all of this crazy stuff. And fast forward, we break up because I was mad that he was going on a trip to Paris with his best friend. And fast forward, end up getting back together, got pregnant. He took a trip to Arizona. I think it was like for the weekend, but he drove to Arizona. And I'm fast forwarding a little bit. While I was 6 months pregnant, something told me to go through a phone, right? Again, I do not go through phones no more. But someone told me to go through a phone. I went through a phone. I found out that weekend that he went to Arizona, he had been texting this old lady and was making plans to go meet up with her or whatever while I'm at his house sitting and dog sitting. And we had just found out I was pregnant. I believe it was like a week before those messages or something like that. So of course, I'm 6 months pregnant. I'm distraught. I'm upset. Like, we got into it real bad. I'm not even gonna lie to y'all. I drank a very large portion of a bottle of wine. It was one of them little, like the gas station wine bottles, Sutter House or something like that. Like the little skinny ones, not the big bottle, but like the skinny bottle. And till this day, I feel very bad for that because I feel like I put my child in danger. And for a nigga that wasn't even worth it, regardless if that's a daddy or not. Like, that's just how I felt. And so I think at that point, I knew while I was 6 months pregnant, I knew that I needed to walk away from him. But of course, there was still part of me that wanted to stay because I'm like, oh, we're having a baby together. Like, I want to at least try. Maybe things can get better. We've had conversations. We were going through all of the relational things. And then this one specific girl popped up. And I tried to tell my baby daddy that this girl wanted her. She was in one of those multi-level marketing groups with all of us. I think by this time I had completely gotten out of it, but my child's father was still involved with it. And he was playing it, like kicking it to me like, oh, this is my best friend. And sometimes men can be ignorant to women's advances, even like if it's not like, if a woman not coming to a man like, give me that D, or like, hey, I want you, like, your advances are going to go over their head. Or maybe they just don't want to acknowledge the advance. Or I don't know. But I started noticing small things with this girl. And I'm like, BD, I'm not going to say his name out loud. So I'm going to call him BD. I'm like, BD, this girl wants you. And I'm trying to tell him that. And things just started going downhill. I basically watched my child's father begin to develop a relationship with a woman who he would then start a romantic relationship with 3 weeks after I moved out. So I'm not even going to get into the specifics of how crazy that situation was. I still think the girl was a psycho to this day. But hey, it is what it is. Me personally, and this is one reason why I don't date people who are freshly out of a relationship. I don't care how long ago you left mentally, because something in you couldn't walk away physically, which means there's still some sort of connection to that person. So how stupid am I going to be to involve myself in a romantic relationship with a person who is still connected to their previous relationship? They haven't had any time to go through the grieving process, especially someone who just had a kid. Me personally, I don't do that. Even back in my days when I was young and dumb, I didn't do nothing like that. But hey, you live and you learn. And I'm pretty sure that girl learned a very valid lesson through that, because I told her to enjoy him while you can. I said that because I knew my child's father, and I knew, because he is such an impulsive decision maker, I knew she wasn't going to be able to keep him satisfied to the extent to which she thought she would. And, that happened. Then he moved away to North Carolina, filed legitimization paperwork, which I was fine with, because I had been telling him, let's just do it before let's fill out the paperwork before the baby even comes. And so when he comes, we could just submit it and sign off of it and be done with it. No, we went through court. He told the judge that I was just an okay mom. Like, it's just been so much. I found out he was having another baby in court. It's just, every time we go to court, he having a new baby. It's so much that has happened during the duration of this relationship that has existed between my child's father and I, that the only way for things to work is, one, forgiveness, and two, minding my business. So we're going to talk about forgiveness today, right? Sorry that was so long. I tried not to give too many details, but I feel like y'all have enough information to now be able to flow with what we're going to be talking about today, right? Forgiveness and flourishing, therefore, after, right? So let's get to it. So we have to understand what exactly is forgiveness and what isn't forgiveness. So forgiveness is you letting bygones be bygones. Forgiveness is a choice, right? Forgiveness is you saying, I am wiping my hands of this. I will no longer walk around with this hurt. I will no longer walk around with this anger towards this person. I will no longer walk around with this anger towards myself. I am extending myself and I am extending this person grace, right? And I'm going to let it go. I'm no longer going to allow these feelings to consume me. I'm no longer going to allow these feelings to turn me into somebody that I am not, in a negative light. A lot of times when we fail to forgive people, that looks like, and I'll give an example. Excuse me. I'll give an example for men and women. Men. A man might get his heart broken and he might have been perceived as a good guy. Say he doesn't forgive himself and the person that hurt him. Now he turns into a, well, F these hoes, and I'm just slanging D everywhere, and I guess I can't be a good guy. I'm going to just turn into the bad guy now. That's what a lack of forgiveness looks like, right? For women, what does a lack of forgiveness look like? And these are just examples relationally, right? I guess I'll just, since we're talking about baby daddies, we use a baby daddy example. Bitter baby moms. Yeah. Yeah. That's what a lack of forgiveness looks like. That's what I could have been if I failed to forgive myself and I failed to forgive my child's father. If that man is trying to be in that baby's life and you are intentionally withholding him from being in that baby's life, all because you mad about what happened in y'all's relationship 10 years ago, you are a bitter baby mama and you have failed to forgive. You have failed to truly let those emotions and those feelings go. Because now, you're looking at this person as the person that they still were 10 years ago, even though people grow and people change. Even with my child's father, I feel like I have not been around this man enough to be able to depict whether or not he is still the same person. Has he changed in the way that he communicates? Yes. I will give him that. I have seen a lot of growth within him. Even the fact that he's come to apologize to me, that's a lot of growth because he wasn't doing a damn bit of apologizing before. So I have seen a lot of growth. People change, so you can't hold on to the person that they once were, right? Because you'll forever be stuck in this cycle. You'll be stuck in a season that was only supposed to last for 6 months, but now you've made it something normal in your life. And instead of it being a season, it is your life. And so that's the importance of forgiveness. Like, you have to let go. You have to let the past version of people go. You have to let those emotions from past seasons go. You have to let all of that go. Because if you continue to hold on to all of that, things that were meant to help you grow will turn into your new personality traits if you continue to hold all of that negativity in. So say, for instance, I've been heartbroken a lot in my life. A lot of guys, I've been cheated on a lot. And if I had never forgiven those people, bitterness, something that was a temporary result of a hurtful situation I was in, it would have turned into a character trait. Me being suspicious of everybody would have turned into a character trait of mine versus it just being a temporary feeling from a negative situation, right? So that's the importance of forgiving somebody. So before we get to talking about other people, I feel like the most important aspect of forgiveness is the ability to forgive oneself. It's so easy to point the finger at other people. It's so easy to be like, oh, well, they did this to hurt me and blah, 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 blah. And it's so easy to do that. But the hardest thing for us to do, and the part that most people miss when it comes to forgiveness, is forgiving oneself. And the reason why forgiving yourself is so crucial to your healing process is because you need to be able to trust yourself with decision making. Right? There was, like, for me, for instance, shortly after we separated, I was attempting to really forgive him because I didn't want my son to suffer from a toxic relationship between his father and I. And so my son was the driving point of why I was trying to forgive my child's father so quickly. But the thing about it was, because I forgot to forgive myself in the roles that I played in that relationship, I then began to not trust myself when it came to choosing men. I felt like I was jaded. I was suspicious of people. I had trust issues because the biggest part about it was I felt like I couldn't trust myself to make the right decision. And so that's why forgiving yourself is so important. And so why do we struggle with forgiving ourselves? For me personally, acknowledging my wrongdoings has never been a major issue for me. I think I've always been pretty good with reflecting on my own actions in a situation, but I feel like for a lot of people, they're not able to do any sort of self-analyzation. You have to be able to reflect, and people are too prideful, or they experience so much heavy hurt that they feel like that they didn't do anything wrong. A lot of people like to play the victim role, but a lot of the times, I would say 99% of the time, both people played a role in a downfall of a relationship. This might be an unpopular opinion, but even when it comes to cheating, now I will say you do have some people out there that are just serial cheaters. You could be the most perfect person, giving them all the attention. You could be, giving them sex if that's what y'all doing, and good sex, frequent sex. You could be, and some people are just natural born serial cheaters because they have some sort of unresolved issues and they feel like we gonna save that for another day. But I do feel like that even when it comes to cheating, there needs to be some self-reflection done because, say, for instance, y'all were good. Y'all together 5, 10 years, even a year or two, y'all are good. And then out of nowhere, this man just starts cheating. Maybe you fell off somewhere, sis. Maybe y'all don't have sex as much no more. And you might have valid reasons why you might not want to have sex with him as much anymore. It might have been because you don't feel safe. You don't feel protected. You feel like y'all are in a rough spot right now financially. It could be very valid reasons, but you also have to acknowledge your part in the downfall, right? And so, yes, it doesn't make it right what the person did. And this is going back to what isn't forgiveness, right? It doesn't make it right what the person did. Him cheating on you doesn't make it right what he did. However, you can still acknowledge the fact that, okay, he wasn't satisfied. He tried to talk to me. I wasn't going for it. I didn't want to have sex with him because I felt like I can't have sex with a man when we're having money problems. And that's a very valid reason, but a deeper issue is now communication. Why couldn't we communicate these things to one another? Right? So that's why it's so important for each and every one of us to be able to do our own self-reflection in these relationships that we have with people, no matter if it's romantic, platonic, anything of that nature, business, because we all have some sort of role in the downfall of situations. Sometimes things are just a misunderstanding. So that's why it's so important to look within oneself. I don't care what the situation is. You could feel like you had 0% to do with anything that happened with the negative outcome. Just still sit and reflect, because you'd be surprised of the things that your mind will bring to the forefront of your mind, right? Just think to yourself, like, is there anything that I need to forgive myself for? Right? Just think back. Like, maybe you fell out with a friend. Maybe you lost a relationship. Anything of that nature. Just think back. Is there anything that I need to possibly forgive myself for? Do I have any negative character traits about myself that could have stemmed from the downfall of a relationship, or a downfall of a friendship, or just stemming from a bad situation that took place? And did I have something to do with that to where I need to forgive myself for? With abusive ex, I had to forgive myself for separating myself from my family. I had to forgive myself for staying as long as I did. I had to forgive myself for the amount of pride that I had. And not loving myself enough to walk away. Also, how would my life improve if I let go of self-blame? Like, sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes we don't point the finger at other people. Sometimes we point the finger at ourselves. And sometimes we're like, hey, I was just watching Temptation Island on Netflix. By the way, y'all, that show is so crazy. That show is so crazy. Just go watch it. But I was watching Temptation Island, and the girl was like, everybody just leaves me. I'd leave myself too. And the host was just like, no, that's not true. And that's a critical moment, because a lot of times when people have been hurt so much and they lack to forgive, it's like they begin to just feel like everything is their fault. And sweetheart, I promise you it's not. There might be some things that are your fault. Let's just be real. There might be some things, but everything is not always your fault. We're humans. Everybody is built completely different. Everybody thinks completely different. Some people don't know themselves. Some people know themselves too well. And we're combining all of this exposure to other people and stuff like that. Sometimes conflict happens and it's okay. Sometimes we butt heads. It's okay. But to like blame yourself constantly about all of the bad things happening in your life, you gotta forgive yourself for that. You gotta stop doing that. So what are some practical steps to forgive yourself? First, you want to acknowledge your part. You want to acknowledge your part. What was your doing? Whether it was something internal, whether you did something external, anything of that nature, right? What can we do? You can journal about it. I know when it came to me, well, I did this for myself and my child's father when it came to forgiving. I wrote a letter and then I burned it. Yeah, I wrote a letter and then I burned it. So that's what I did. You can give yourself some grace. Know that you're human. Know that you make mistakes just like everybody else. Nobody is not worthy of a little grace. So give yourself some grace and just be intentional with the desire of wanting to do better, right? You just have to say, hey, I messed up. I shouldn't have did that. Let me figure out why I did that and what steps I can take to make sure that that doesn't happen again to the best of my ability. Because sometimes we gonna do the same mistake over again. I did it. That's how I ended up with a baby. So we just gotta give ourselves grace. So let's go to forgiving others. Why is it so hard to forgive others, right? I would say the same thing. The pride, pain, the hurt. Sometimes we're blinded by the hurt that we've experienced from somebody else, and we just choose not to forgive. Like I said, forgiveness is a choice. And sometimes when you feel like you have to choose to forgive that person, that pride gets in the way. I recently took a parenting class, and in the middle of the parenting class, a few days prior to that parenting class, I had got into it with my child's father about something. Why am I telling y'all this? I got into it with my child's father about something pertaining to my son, because we don't talk unless it has something to do, like specifically with my child. And it was something that I personally felt like on his end was wrong. And took this parenting class, and they basically read me for filth, and they were discussing different ways of parenting. And basically, in the end, from based off of what they were saying, I was in the wrong for how I responded to this situation. I was trying to control how he parented and what he did in his household, which that's not healthy for anybody, because as a result, it's so easy for that to turn into an argument, which it did. So yeah, I was talk about pride, y'all. I was on the Zoom crying, y'all. Like I was at my desk here, and I'm literally on the Zoom like this. I got my blanket because it was almost 9 o'clock at night. And I got my blanket. I'm just wiping my eyes like this because I'm furious, because I'm like, dang, I was wrong for that. I was wrong for that. And I had to apologize to him. I hate apologizing to my baby daddy. Is that wrong of me? Yes, it is. It is wrong, and I can admit that. But it's my pride. It is my pride, because it's my pride. And let me say this. I know I'm giving out all these key points and stuff like that, but I'm still human. There are still things that I'm working through, right? There's still things, even though I've forgiven my child's father for a lot of things, unfortunately, there are still things that happen that I have to learn to re-forgive him. And so when I was in this space, there were things, like I said, this happened like maybe like 3 weeks ago ish, maybe a month ago. So there were things that had taken place that I had still not forgiven him for, that had happened more recently. And so sitting in that moment, knowing that I had to apologize to him, and the Holy Spirit wasn't letting me go. I mean, had me in a chokehold, like, so I apologized. Yeah, I apologized. And I did not want to at all. But I also had to remember in that moment, like, Sierra, you've got to forgive this man, because the fact that you sitting there crying because you got to send a text message apologizing to this man is crazy work. Like, it's crazy. But something like this entire process is a lifelong journey. You're never going to just forgive somebody and that be it, and you never have to forgive them again, especially if you're married. Like, that's something you're just always going to have to do. People are going to mess up all the time. You're going to have to constantly forgive them. Right. And you might get tired of it, but you chose to commit to that person for the rest of your life. So you chose to continue to forgive that person for the rest of your life. Not saying forgiving them for anything that's detrimental to your marriage, but but like, you chose to continue to forgive them. And even though my child's father and I are not in a committed relationship, I'm stuck with that nigga. He's stuck with me. We don't have to talk all the time. We don't. There are very limited things that we have to interact and come together about. But yeah, even with that, there are just going to be certain things that I may have to forgive him for, and he may have to forgive me for. Forgiveness is not just a one-time thing. It's a lifelong thing. Me sending that text message, it was just, I hated to have to do it because I was still upset about some things that had taken place that I had yet to forgive him for. In that moment, realizing how hard it was for me to do that because I was so prideful, like, it clicked in my head, like, Sarah, you've got to let some things go. Like, you got to let some things go. Like, it's not this deep at all. So, and that's when I began my forgiveness process, when it came to forgiving him for, ways that he went about certain situations. We made agreements when we were on good terms. After his crazy ex, we were on good terms, and we came to an agreement about very specific things. And he broke those agreements. I felt a certain way about it because he never came to me and said, hey, I know we made these agreements, we made these promises to each other, and I kind of feel different about it now. I can respect that. But when we come to an agreement about something, and then he went off and did his own thing, and then I'm having to find out in these crazy ways, it pissed me off. Because I was like, in my mind, I'm like, well, I thought we had this understanding. If the understanding changed, like, you could have just talked to me about that, right? So that's honest, and that is my real time truth. That is something that I had to let go of. I had to realize, it is what it is. I can't control it. My therapist told me focus on things you can control. That is something that I can't control. I need to forgive him and let it go. So just think about it. Who in your life do you need to forgive? Not yourself, because this is not the part that we're talking about ourselves. Who in your life do you need to forgive? And try to think about why. And also think about what's stopping me from forgiving them, right? Why is it so hard to forgive them? And in this part of it, you're going to relive some emotions, and that's okay. Sit in it, but don't sit in it forever. Sit in it, acknowledge it, move on to the next step. Reframe the situation. You could be empathetic, give them some grace, say, it is what it is. It's the past. I'm letting it go. Or you can set some boundaries, right? Set some boundaries. So all the exciting stuff is out the way. How does forgiveness lead to growth, right? For me personally, I think forgiving myself and others has been the most freeing thing that I've ever done in my life. It does not feel good to walk around with anger and resentment and hate towards yourself and other people. It honestly feels good. It feels good to be able to walk around with a clear conscience. It feels good to, like, for instance, you know what, y'all? I'm about to spill tea one more time because God is telling me to tell this. I'm going to share this. My child father and I had court for nothing crazy, just some child support stuff, modification. We had court, and me personally, I felt like there was a lot of discrepancies in the paperwork. Now, court was a couple of weeks, was it? I don't know. I believe it was a couple of weeks after I took that parenting class, right? And in between court and the parenting class, I had really worked on forgiving him for the mess or whatever, right? For the things that happened that I talked about before. And so we were doing discovery requests and all this stuff. And, I was ready to get in court because I kind of felt played with. Even though I had forgiven him for these previous agreements that we had came to. And it's crazy because it popped up in my phone. You know, iPhone shows you, if you have the photos widget, it shows you different pictures and stuff. I was going through some of the widget pictures, and the message that was sent where we agreed on this specific thing popped up. And so, anywho, I have been working really hard on forgiving him for that. And so I feel like I've let that go. I truly feel like I've let it go. And so we're doing discovery requests and everything for this court case. I go into court ready to and we're both representing ourselves. I'm ready to slap all the paperwork on the desk. But I was feeling very uneasy the entire time, and I didn't know why. And so while we were waiting on our turn to be heard, I prayed in the courtroom, and I just asked God for clarity and to give me wisdom on how to move forward with this situation. Because I had originally planned on, spilling all the tea on all the discrepancies I saw. And it was a lot, y'all. Lying in the financial affidavit, all of this, it was a lot. And after I prayed, I just felt like the Lord told me not to do any of that. So, at first I was like, no, I'm gonna listen to the Lord. We're in court, and he is basically trying to paint this picture that I'm not being genuine about me walking away from my job because it is a family ran business. He's saying that I have the possibility of making so much more. He's saying that I failed to disclose my new income, which I did. And, he was talking about some 15,000. He had his paperwork. My baby daddy was ready. He was ready. I mean, when he came up, he put all the folders out this. And this is why forgiveness is important. In that moment, especially when he was coming at me about certain things, if I wouldn't have forgiven him, I would have walked into that courtroom moving in a very spiteful way, because I would have still been holding on to the fact that he didn't keep his part of the agreements that we came to, and that I was upset about it. Subconsciously, I would have still been angry at him about that. And I would have been moving in a very spiteful way. I would have been doing all of this extra stuff, or when he questioned me about certain things, instead of me just telling my truth, I would have had attitude, or I would have been, just very distasteful. And so that's why it's so important to forgive, because you just have this freeing feeling. And I'm so glad that God ordered our steps in the way that He did, because even with the whole me apologizing thing, that was a very humbling experience. Even just thinking about it makes me want to cry. It was a very humbling experience. And so I personally was very proud of myself with how I handled the court situation. And I feel like if I wouldn't have forgiven him, if the whole going back and forth in text messages didn't happen, if the parenting plan thing didn't happen, I don't feel like I would have handled things in the way that I did in court. I don't feel like I would have handled it in that way. And I feel like it would have ended up backfiring on me. When I went to court, I was able to tell the true reason behind me walking away from my job. Originally, I was going to say that they fired me. I was going to go into court and lie, which is crazy work. But because I felt so at peace, because I felt so freed from any sort of negativity, any type of anxiousness that it came to when with dealing with my child's father, I was able to tell my truth. I was able to walk in there and just speak my truth and speak it freely. And the judge understood. I told the judge straight up, God told me to leave for my job. And so I did. Anybody going into court, you want to be real strategic. You want to have your ducks in a row. But I feel like me being able to forgive and let go of those negative feelings allowed me to just be free, and allowed me to be obedient and do what God was telling me to do in that moment. Because if I didn't forgive, God telling me not to use all of this stuff that I had found, I would have been like, oh no, God, I got that. So we want to do a visualization exercise, just really quick. So I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to imagine your life free of your past burdens. What does that look like and what does that feel like of all of that hurt being lifted up off of? And just take a second. I don't know about y'all, but it looks and it feels real good to me. Last episode, we did good. We were at 27 minutes, but baby, this episode ain't gonna be that short. But anywho, I hope you guys took something away from this podcast. The key points: what is forgiveness? Letting go. You have to let bygones be bygones. Let go of the hurt feelings. Let go of that heavy burden on you. Forgive yourself. Forgive others. And, doing those key things, journaling, scream into a pillow. I don't know. Like, I wouldn't say punch a wall or anything, but like seek therapy. Like, just really work on the forgiveness of yourself and other people, because I promise you, it is such a freeing experience. Very freeing experience. And like I said before, it's something that we will constantly have to do. Something that we constantly have to do. And I will admit that I believed for a very long time that because I had forgiven my child's father before, I thought that I was good. I thought I was good up until I had to send that apology text. That is when I realized there's some more forgiveness that needs to take place. So thank you so much to coming back to watch another episode of the Women's Vault Podcast. Follow us on Instagram at the Women's Vault Podcast. It'll be here listed below. Make sure you hit that like, comment, and subscribe button. Share this video with somebody else. I love you all. Y'all have a great day. Be blessed. And we'll see you guys next time.